All right, let's dive right into this explainer, because today we're looking at what has to be one of the most audacious, expensive, and just outright secretive intelligence operations of the entire Cold War. We're talking about the 1974 CIA mission known as Project Azorian. The objective? Oh, just to pull off an absolute heist by stealing a sunken Soviet nuclear submarine right off the ocean floor. I mean, it's a story packed with mind-boggling engineering, high-stakes international espionage, and a billionaire's cover story that honestly sounds like it was ripped straight out of a Hollywood thriller.
So to really wrap our heads around the sheer scale of this operation, you first have to understand the depth we're dealing with here. The Soviet K-129 submarine lay at a staggering depth of 16,000 feet below the surface of the Pacific Ocean. To put that into perspective, that is more than 3 miles straight down into the crushing pressure and complete pitch black of the abyss. It was widely considered an impossible target. But before we plunge into those depths to see exactly how they pulled it off, take a quick second to like this explainer and subscribe to the channel for more historical deep dives.
Okay, so the crisis actually began pretty rapidly. In late February 1968, the Soviet ballistic missile sub K-129 left Kamchatka on a totally routine patrol, but then it completely missed its designated radio check-ins. By March, the Soviets were frantically searching the North Pacific. They couldn't find a thing. But get this, the U.S. Navy was listening, using acoustic data from their underwater SOS hydrophone network, specifically the Naval Facility Point Sur. They actually managed to isolate the sonic signature of an implosion on March 8th. Armed with 5 distinct lines of bearing, U.S. naval intelligence narrowed down the location. And by July, they sent the USS Halibut, which was a specially equipped sub, to initiate Operation Sand Dollar. Using a towed robotic camera system literally just called the Fish, the Halibut successfully located the wreck and snapped over 20,000 photos. Now, imagine the absolute jackpot for intelligence analysts. Reviewing the Halibut's photos, the CIA believed that the nuclear missile in the number 3 tube was still perfectly intact. This wasn't just metal. This was a beautifully detailed intelligence bounty. We're talking the R-21 nuclear missile, priceless cryptological codebooks, advanced fire control, and Soviet navigation equipment. It was exactly what Defense Secretary Melvin Laird and National Security Advisor Henry Kissinger pitched to President Richard Nixon when they proposed a clandestine recovery mission to literally yank these secrets right off the ocean floor. But here's the massive problem. How on earth do you build a highly specialized ship and just park it in the middle of the Pacific for weeks without the Soviets getting incredibly suspicious? Well, to hide their true intentions, the CIA concocted an absolutely brilliant front. They needed a believable civilian excuse to be scraping the deep ocean. Enter eccentric, reclusive billionaire Howard Hughes. Hughes readily agreed to lend his name to the project, publicly claiming his massive new ship, the Hughes Glomar Explorer, was built simply to mine valuable manganese nodules from the ocean floor. I mean, it was the absolute perfect disguise for a highly classified reality. And to truly grasp the financial scale of Project Azorian, just think about this number for a second. If you adjust the original $800 million price tag for inflation, the CIA spent the equivalent of roughly $3.9 billion on this single covert operation. They contracted Global Marine Development to build the massive 619-foot-long Glomar Explorer in a shipyard near Philadelphia. The engineering required to pull this off had quite simply never been invented before. They were making it up as they went. At the heart of the whole operation was this massive, custom-built mechanical claw designed by Lockheed. Now, officially, in the highly sterile classified documents, it was just called the capture vehicle. But the engineers who spent years designing and testing this heavy-lift beast, they affectionately nicknamed her Clementine. This claw had to be ridiculously strong enough to cradle a massive steel submarine completely filled with water and haul it up against the immense drag of the ocean. Let's walk through how this actually worked, because the mechanics are just fascinating. First, the Glomar Explorer had to float perfectly stable over a fixed point 16,000 feet above the target. Then the crew connected pairs of 30-foot steel pipes, kind of similar to an oil rig, slowly lowering Clementine section by section all the way down to the seafloor. Once Clementine grabbed the targeted submarine section, a massive winch system had to pull it all the way back up. But here is the genius part. They hoisted the wreckage right up into a massive concealed moon pool right in the center of the ship. Once it was inside, doors beneath closed to create a floor. So the entire salvage process could happen completely hidden from any passing ships or, more importantly, Soviet spy satellites overhead. So, fast forward through years of secret preparation, construction, and testing, the Hughes Glomar Explorer departs Long Beach, California, and on July 4, 1974, it finally arrives at the exact coordinates in the North Pacific to execute the heist. For over a month, the crew worked tirelessly over the site, painstakingly lowering thousands of feet of pipe into the dark water.
But of course, an operation this big doesn't go unnoticed for long. Tensions spiked to incredible levels when Soviet Navy ships actually showed up right at the work site. The ocean-going tugboat SB-10 and the missile-range instrumentation ship Shazma began circling the Glomar. It turns out, Soviet Ambassador Anatoly Dobrinin had sent urgent warnings back to the Soviet Navy that a salvage operation might be imminent, so ships were ordered to monitor the area. Yet, incredibly, because the Soviets had never actually found the K-129 themselves, they didn't know the exact coordinates of their own sunken sub. So they just watched the Glomar Explorer closely, completely unable to prove what was happening deep beneath it. Talk about a nerve-wracking standoff.
Right, so it's a high-stakes standoff on the surface, while 3 miles below, the heavy lifting is already underway. The capture vehicle had successfully engaged the submarine, but the ultimate question remained. Will Clementine's steel grip actually hold the immense weight of the K-129 on that terrifyingly long journey up? Now, while we wait to see if Clementine reels in the ultimate Cold War prize, take a quick second to share this explainer with a fellow history or engineering buff. Okay, back down to the deaths. Well, the ascent was agonizingly slow, putting just unimaginable stress on the equipment. And, tragically for the mission, the claws suffered a catastrophic failure. You see, they were made from miraging steel. It's exceptionally strong, which is exactly why they chose it. But it lacks the flexibility and ductility needed to handle the tremendous, shifting dynamic loads of the ocean. Under that immense stress, several of the claws just fractured and broke apart. And this devastating mechanical failure caused the target object to break apart. Roughly 2/3 of the targeted 138-foot section, including the sail and, critically, those highly prized nuclear ballistic missiles, sheared right off. Imagine the heartbreak on that ship. The crew could only watch their instruments in horror as the bulk of their billion-dollar prize sank thousands of feet back to the dark ocean floor.
Actually, scratch that. It wasn't a total loss. The CIA successfully held onto and recovered the 38-foot bow section of the K-129. Inside this section, they hit a mini jackpot. 2 nuclear torpedoes, various submarine components, and highly valuable codebook materials. They also recovered the bodies of 6 Soviet submariners. Because of radioactivity concerns, and really out of a deep sense of military honor, the American crew provided a respectful burial at sea for those Soviet crewmen. They placed them in a metal casket and honored them with a formal military ceremony, which was all secretly filmed by the CIA. The CIA actually considered attempting a second recovery mission to get the rest of it, but, extreme secrecy just can't last forever. By early 1975, the dam broke. New York Times investigative reporter Seymour Hersh had been tracking the story for a while. While the government desperately tried to delay publications citing national security, journalist Jack Anderson ultimately shattered the Howard Hughes cover story, breaking the news on a national radio broadcast. By March 19, 1975, the New York Times published a massive account exposing Project Azorian to the entire world. Despite the massive public leak, the U.S. government internally recognized what an astounding engineering feat had actually taken place. During a declassified 1975 cabinet meeting with President Gerald Ford, Defense Secretary James R. Schlesinger argued that the mission was an absolute success that should be publicly celebrated. He literally said, "This episode has been a major American accomplishment. The operation is a marvel, technically and with maintaining secrecy." But CIA Director William Colby definitely didn't want to humiliate the Soviets and escalate Cold War tensions. So the legacy of the mission took a totally fascinating legal turn. When journalist Harriet Ann Philippe filed a Freedom of Information Act request regarding the CIA's attempts to suppress the story, the CIA issued a very carefully crafted legal reply. They stated they could neither confirm nor deny the existence of the requested documents. This phrase instantly became famous as the Glomar response, and it is a bedrock precedent in American intelligence law that is still heavily used today.
So, as we close out this explainer, we're really left with a massive historical debate. Ponder this for a second. Did the fraction of the K-119 they actually recovered justify the immense cost, the years of effort, and the massive risk of sparking a major international incident? Was a $3.9 billion gamble worth the intelligence gained from just that 38-foot bow section? What do you think? Let me know your verdict in the comments. And if you want to explore more astonishing covert history, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Until next time, keep questioning the official story.